Okay, so for example 2, we're given this interval. We look back at our little chart and we see what we're dealing with. We have the x squared first and there's a plus sign. So we're going to be using this middle one. So don't remember adding, you can switch them, right? 1 plus 2 is the same thing as 2 plus 1. So essentially we're working with this second one. Our a in this case is going to be the square root of 2, right? So essentially this 2 is equal to the square, or sorry, this 2 is equal to a squared. So to get the a by itself, we take the square root. So that's where we get a is equal to the square root of 2, okay? We go back to our chart. X is equal to a tangent theta. So that's where we get x is equal to the square root of 2 tangent theta. And then we take the derivative of x. And when we do that, remember that number just comes down. We go back to our little chart from Cal 1. Tangent is here, it's on the bottom, so it's going to be secant squared theta d theta, okay? So now we are just going to rewrite everything from x in terms of theta, and there isn't an interval, so we're good with that. So now instead of x, we are now going to write the square root of 2 tan theta. So that's going to be to the 5th power, which is why I raised it to the 5th. The one on the bottom has the radical. Make sure you write that. Then we have that our new x, square root of 2 again, tangent theta, and that's being squared, plus 2, and now our dx is now being changed to this expression right here, okay? And now we need to do some algebra. Essentially, to be raised to the 5th means to write it 5 times. So you would have square root of 2, square root of 2, square root of 2, square root of 2, square root of 2. The square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is 2. So if we do that twice, we get 2 times 2, which is 4. And then that leaves us with the square root of 2, okay? So that's where that 4 square root of 2 came from. I highly suggest you just use your calculator. We have tangent, and now it's to the 5th. And then this stuff on the outside, I just moved it to the top, okay? On the bottom, to be squared means to write it twice. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. Then we have tangent squared, and then plus 2, okay? Pluses and minuses separate your parts. On the bottom, we have 2 parts underneath this radical, and they both share 2, so we're going to factor that 2 out, okay? The reason why we're doing that is because if you look on our chart, our goal is to have either tangent squared or secant squared somewhere, so we need to get this tangent by itself, okay? And there was a 2 connected to it, so we need to move it out, okay? So now this tangent squared plus 1, we know now is equal to secant squared because of our little chart. So we're going to change that red portion to that secant squared theta, okay? And then the square root of 2 over here can just come to the outside. So whenever you're doing multiplication on the inside, so if you have like the square root of a times b, that's the same thing as the square root of a times the square root of b, okay? So you can separate them like that. All right, so now on the top, I didn't talk about this 8. That came from this square root of 2 and this square root of 2, which will give you a 2, and then times 4, which will give you 8, okay? So now we have 8 over the square root of 2. If you rationalize that, you'll get 4 square root of 2. You can leave it as 8 over square root of 2. I really don't care. You can plug it in your calculator. Your calculator will tell you 4 square root of 2. Essentially, when you're rationalizing it, you just don't want that fraction on the bottom, right? So you multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 2. The bottom, square root of 2 times square root of 2 become 2. You have the 8 on the top and the square root of 2 on the top also. And then 8 divided by 2 would give us 4. And that's where that 4 square root of 2 came from, okay? So now from here, remember the square root and the squared cancel. So that's just secant theta. We have 2 secants on the top and 1 secant on the bottom. So the one on the bottom is going to go away. And that's going to leave us 1 on the top. So now, remember, if it's just a number or a scalar, you can take it out to the outside. So that's where that 4 square root of 2 came from. We still have our tangent to the 5th, and then we have 1 secant left, okay? So now we go right back to 7.2, and we look at our different table charts that we can use. I don't know what I do with, oh, here it is, okay. So we go back and look. We have tangent secant, so that's going to be that second chart over here. So it says even and odd.